What's up, everybody? I'm Indy. Welcome to the Indie Game Business. This gentleman in the middle is Mr. J. Powell. And over here we have Bart Glinson on the end. He's from the what did you say the OSD was? The operations something?
OSD just means OSD.
OSD.
I like capitalized letters, and I like them in threes. So hey.
Awesome. But I mean, it's Operation Supply Drop, really, right?
Yeah. That's where it started.
Originated from.
Yeah, that's where it originated from. That's still here. We call it OSD because that's a program within a pillar. So.
But what did you say OSD was? What was the
Office of Secretary of Defense?
There you go.
Which hey, we do. They're one of our partners. So hey, it's good.
So hey, look, if you're wondering where all those troops that were in Syria went, now they are, distributing games to veterans, from Glenn's house in Texas. That's where everybody is. So.
That sounds about right.
So, I mean, first off, dude, welcome to the show. I've known about OSD for many years, and then a few months ago, Glenn reached out and asked if I would help, and I'm like, for what little I can do, yes, I will absolutely, help do this. And I love the premise of it, and we've been working together since then. And we'll get into the whole, the benefits and what y'all do and all that stuff. But the thing to keep in mind is, these opportunities working with OSD or, any charity basically can be a huge boost to your game and to your studio. And so that's what we're going to talk about a bit today. But, first we'll start where we always start. So walk us through your career. And usually we say, how did you get into the game industry? But you're kind of like sitting on the periphery of the industry. Yeah. So walk us through your career up through, where you are at OSD now, and, we'll go from there.
Absolutely. Well, and weird stuff too is I've actually been inside and outside of the industry, even outside of OSD. So I've got a lot of weird connections back into it. But I'd say, on the OSD part, it's one of those things. I'm a civilian. I've just been working with veterans a number of years. I have a number of folks who have served in my family, and I've always just had an affinity for vets. I mean, it's cutting to the end point of it professionally. I have a lack of tolerance for BS in the workspace, and I like some of the same toys. So that's where it really comes from. But there's been a number of times over the past, especially 15 to 20 years, where I'm working with a veteran on my team, or he's a peer in these various companies I've been a part of, and a lot of what they face in those particular environments due to, whether it's the skill set that they developed in the military and translating over, or just understanding the culture inside of some of these businesses. And I mean, the good thing is I hate most of this fake manufactured culture, and so do vets. So there's always a way to connect there. But over the years, I've just seen more and more of those types of opportunities. And really, OSD was was something where I guess it was probably 5.5 years ago, was asked to join as the CEO and grow this into something that was much bigger, and that just allowed me to have a voice and a platform, because thankfully I've earned some respect in the space to go out and do some great work. Now on the kind of gaming side of it, weirdly enough, I can go back to probably 1998, 1999. I was actually an engineer at a large localization company, which cracks up a lot of people because I barely have a handle on English. So what am I doing with Japanese and German, all these? And I was part of the team that did the translation for Baldur's Gate way back then. And, it's kind of fast forwarding through other things. I had lots of gaming clients. One of the companies I was at before OSD was a company called Chaotic Moon, which was then acquired by Accenture. But we built games for, we did a lot of stuff with Disney. A lot of it was mobile, but some console games. We did some Hello Kitty stuff. But in that same job, I developed smart weapon systems, with DARPA. So it's kind of a cool, a cool spectrum. So you joke about it, you as well. I have actual legitimately diagnosed ADD to the surprise of nobody. So I've just figured out what do I enjoy doing? I enjoy helping people. I'm, moderately to above average, decent with it. And I get this space. I understand the long term of it. So here we are, trying to do some good every day.
And yeah, that's the thing, and that's the beauty of it. As long as you're doing something you enjoy, the ADHD doesn't really kick in that much. It does, but you're focused on something.
Yeah, exactly. Wait, what's that over there?
Yeah, no, really. Squirrel. So why games? With all the stuff that you do, and you're partnered with, like you mentioned right before we went on there, Starbucks and a lot of other, of these big corporate companies. Why did you move into games, and where did games come in all of this process?
Yeah, so the simplistic side of it, and that's where, again, that's the origin of OSD, was with these supply drops. So video game care packages. The short and simple on it is, when you're deployed, life sucks. There's a lot of downtime, and a lot of people understand this now. I mean, shoot, we've been at war for, this go around, 17, 18 years at this point, to where we now have kids that are enlisting that were actually born after 9/11. Like, that's insane to think about. But
I feel old. But yeah, okay.
So I feel old even in that one. So when you look at that, it's a lot of downtime. It's a lot of hurry up and wait. A lot of sitting around, and video games and board games as well. That's another thing I point out. Board games is huge because it's really just to get through that monotony and boredom. And you're really seeing it, with building unit cohesion and boosting morale. Those are fancy words behind it. But I think what's even been cool is kind of like the question behind the question, which is, well, what's happened with how games are received over this course of almost 9 years? Well, early on, because 9 years is almost essentially like a military generation, meaning, if the average person is in somewhere around, 4 to 6 years, you've turned over a lot of those people. And early on in this, again, just as many games. I mean, there's stories of guys back in Desert Storm in '91 with an original Game Boy in their front shirt pocket, racing across the desert. But it was still not respected or understood by your command. So the higher ups essentially were like, oh, these stupid nerd kids are coming in here, like, what the heck's going on? It's stuff that, again, reflects a lot of typical just culture in general. But what you've seen over those 9 years was, as a lot of men and women worked their way up through the ranks that grew up playing video games, and that just became this kind of standard activity. They're then utilizing games to do a Gears of War tournament where whoever wins that, the higher up will end up taking whatever their crappy duty is for the day. And they can have a day off, or just it's a much more interesting way to have fun, and it's obviously better than flipping bottles and throwing rocks in cans and having spiders and scorpions fight each other. Though that's pretty fun. I mean, if we really want to get serious.
So, and we skipped over this, and then my apologies. What does OSD actually do? Let's get some of that baseline in there before we get to. Tell us what OSD does.
Yeah, so I guess at a high level, OSD, we're a veteran support ecosystem. We have 3 pillars. We have social connectivity, professional development, and community service. And then each of those has a number of different programs. Supply drops, games to grunts, a lot of the gaming stuff falls under social connectivity, because naturally that's what we're trying to do. Why are we providing games? We want to make people happy, and we want to bring them together. But really, as OSD has grown, we wanted to listen to our constituency. So the troops we serve, as they're transitioning out, as they're struggling to find jobs or just really get a foothold in life. And that's where these other programs around professional development and really taking our philosophy of more small groups, or understanding that each veteran is actually different, in the same way that each person is actually different. And then really looking at, again, with community service side of it, how do we really build that pride in community? How do we, get people geographically or physically proximate to one another so they can have fun? And under all this, it comes down to mental health. I mean, that's what this is all about at the end of the day, is how do you get people together to do things they enjoy, cover the different types of activities, ensure we are providing them with the right services that they need while they're in, while they're transitioning, while they're out, not overlook spouses and kids and really grow. So all that being said, again, 9 years in, we just celebrated 1 million served this last Saturday. We committed to our next million by the end of 2021. And I think you'll continue to see a lot of these programs become more and more, focused and tweaked down to the individual chapter cities that we're in, or the different types of partnerships that are coming out of it.
I see that, and that's awesome. So now we've got a much better view on everything, and so we can actually talk in context, which is nice.
Bingo.
So, what are some of the companies that you all have worked with, and this can go gaming and non-gaming as well, to just kind of put a big high level perspective on this, that you've worked with over the years, and especially with the game industry, how are they typically involved? What can they contribute to help out, with all of this?
Yeah, no, great question. So, I mean, the gaming industry itself has been interesting, because obviously, and I always like to call this out for additional context. Supporting veterans and supporting military sometimes gets inappropriately lumped into being some sort of political, thing. And yes, mind you, again, I can see how you can dot a line into it. And because of that, and I know anybody watching this is not surprised, the gaming industry, certainly the gaming community, has a lot of opinions on things. And that's something we always, almost on a daily basis, it seemed like, have to work around and understand. That being the case, really where a lot of these companies are coming in is understanding that they have to hire veterans at the end of the day, and it's about brand alignment and co-branding and supporting things. And they're utilizing this, ability to connect with an organization like OSD to show that they care about this, specific cause. In the same way, they might work with Extra Life, benefiting, Children's Miracle Network and the different great things they do in hospitals all over the country, because it's socially responsible. It's a philanthropic marketing strategy, if you will. And so I'd say there's typically probably 3 areas, if we really look at where they help. Number one is in the supply drops, so providing physical product. Hardware, we've worked with a number of different peripheral companies where we're sending, headsets and keyboards and those sorts of things. And mind you, things like keyboards aren't necessarily going overseas in all cases. They might go to, for instance, we have a strategic partnership with USO North Carolina, where OSD is actually outfitting and maintaining all of their USO centers, all the entertainment part of it. So USO is not providing all that gaming stuff going forward. OSD is going to, and we're going to outfit all the gaming PCs and the consoles and provide games. And then again, games obviously being a part of it, and most importantly, having the newest and the best. The second one of those is our Games to Grunts program. So Games to Grunts was a real interesting one that was started probably, I guess, it's formally in its current form, probably 2.5 years ago, and it's online distribution of keys. So up until this point, we'd get keys from partners, and they're appreciated. And I was just not happy at the redemption rate on them, to be bluntly honest. Partners were fine with it, and they were just happy if it was roughly the same as if they were giving out keys at a conference. But to us, that was a opportunity to interact with an individual troop that may need other services in the future. So we had to figure out, how do we connect those pieces? And so we launched Games to Grunts. It's gamestogrunts.weareosd.org. And it's a fully secure platform. It's partnered with ID.me, which is one of the top military verification services in the country. And Ripit Energy, which to any service members listening, that's essentially the unofficial energy drink of the military. They're the primary underwriter for the platform. And, we'll get Steam keys and Xbox keys from everybody from, Konami and Namco, Bandai to, Xbox. And that's been great. And then the last one is 8-Bit Salute. So 8-Bit Salute that's OSD's Extra Life. So Extra Life, giant charity stream, benefits Children's Miracle Network. 8-Bit Salute, it's kind of the gaming community's version of that. And I think we've raised probably $1.5+ million since that started a number of years ago. And again, it just gives this platform to do things. And a lot of the partners on that are these gaming companies where the company themselves, the developer themselves is taking their community, they're coming up with these charity streams, or they're doing, rev shares, in-game items, those sorts of stuff. Because even if you donate a bunch of games, they still need to get where they're going. And when we have a 4,000+ square foot warehouse and we're shipping out literally thousands of packages to tens of thousands of troops, and that's just one program, we have to make sure we cover cost on those.
And that's it. So how do you get the word out to veterans and the service members about the site where they can go redeem these keys?
So we purposely don't advertise it for the same way that, have you ever been to one of those barbecue places that only makes a certain amount every single day?
Oh, yeah, you got to be there by lunch.
Yeah, so it's kind of like that. So we run into that situation. There's a limited amount, and if we advertise second it's public by our proactive outreach, it's all gone. And we've seen this happen. So funny enough, with Games to Grunts, it's been out for years now, and suddenly, I don't know what was in the past 48 hours, like 10 outlets picked up on it because Tekken and Soul Calibur were on it, and there was like thousands of keys on those, and they disappear in an hour. Mind you, we had earlier this year, there was a bunch of Xbox Game Pass and Gold. The Game Pass was like a $240 key. I think those went away in 48 minutes or some obscenely short amount of time. Basically it goes on Reddit, and the internet sees it. And mind you, again, what's great is it's 100% verified service members. Like, there is absolutely no risk whatsoever. We've had zero fraud on it. We've had no issue with people obtaining multiple keys because our developer's awesome. But our main thing is it's really supply demand, and we can't really proactively advertise it because I don't know when it's going to come back. Like, if I'd love to get more Tekken keys, and trust me, once those articles came out, I'm going to show that to our partners over there at Bandai Namco and say, hey, more of this Veterans Day is coming up, but we're not sure. And so that's where you've been extremely helpful, in securing a lot of these keys. And really what we want to point out, I want to be very, very clear, is there's no such thing as a game, the game for veterans. I think people wrongfully lean towards, they only like, Call of Duty and first-person shooters. Yeah, some of them do, but they also like to play just games because they're also just people that like video. So, the diversity of Banton is awesome.
Well, and one of the groups that was actually mentioned in the article that came out yesterday, and they're friends of ours, and then they've been on the show as well, is the Crusade Brothers. And when I reached out to them about OSD, weeks or months, whatever it was, one of their comments was, yes, we would love to do this because veterans are some of our most religious followers and passionate people in there, because just the way that game is so deep and you kind of get lost in it. And they've said it's not a game that you would sit down and go, oh, this will be great for veterans, because you're right. Initially you start going, oh, well, they just play Call of Duty. Yeah. But they play Call of Duty in real life, so they probably may not want to do that in their off time. But there is no sort of basic game. And a lot of times, and this is, what we're doing our best to help you with anyway, is a lot of the indie companies don't realize that, there would even be an upside to doing this, or don't know how to be involved and that sort of stuff. But yeah, they have this gigantic RPG space opera. I don't even know how many hours I've put in it, but they said immediately, we get a lot of active duty and veterans that come to us and tell us how much they love the game while they're deployed.
Absolutely. One, it's those big open world, even the Skyrims come to mind, The Witcher. back during my World of Warcraft phase, which I still jokingly say I still dream of Azeroth, because during a 9-month period, I was logged into the game for 3 months. So 8 hours a day.
Nicely done.
I'm still married. My kids thought I was awesome. You start doing the math. It's because the second my wife fell asleep, I'd be on a laptop with the the little mouse there. And I think there was one morning, and it was like after Lich King came out or something. We were doing this raid for like the umpteenth time, and it's like the sun starts to rise, and I had one of those like, what am I doing with my life moments, which was real interesting. But anyways, a lot of the guild that I ran was service members, and weirdly enough in that, and again, a lot of people, especially in all the looking for group, easy mode stuff that caused Blizzard to end up going back to the original in some cases. It made it so it's hard for a lot of service members to play, because like, oh, hey, if you miss Tuesday raid,
you don't get to go on Friday.
Yeah. And that doesn't work, because at the time you don't know when they're going to be there. What if they deploy? Like, you got to have a place, a community for them to come back to, and that's not normal in that particular space. But to your question about getting involved and really developers understanding, I think the number one thing we point out is, number one, it doesn't cannibalize sales. Like, it really doesn't. I would challenge anybody, especially with all these indie games, and again, any intellectually honest developer knows it's hard to acquire customers, and that takes some effort. And the demographic that we're reaching through Games to Grunts probably wouldn't discover your game to begin with. So that being the case, it's like, okay, yeah, my game is $5, $20, $50. You have to continue to maintain them because they're a customer, but really it is truly a donation. The good thing, especially for I know for certain with the U.S. developers, is it is an in-kind donation, same as if you were donating clothes or items to Goodwill or Salvation Army. And so that's something, talk to your accountants and lawyers, disclaimer on the bottom. But you can
legal disclaimer.
Yeah, you can write that off, and a lot of them utilize that. But we've also seen, especially with multiplayer games, utilizing this is just, again, for some player acquisition. But mind you, at the same time, I want to be really honest, like, if the mentality, we've had very few developers that kind of went down the wrong way. If you think you're going to utilize the OSD community to like build your game or sell things in app, you're completely missing the point. I mean, really what this is about is, first and foremost, it's providing, fun and, again, social connectivity to our service members. Like that's the starting point. That's where this all comes from. And, if you make good content, if you make a fun game, like, let's do it. Let's make it happen, and let's put it together and get it out there.
Yeah, I think a lot of people will look at it and go, okay, well, listen, if we give away a copy.
He just froze with his finger.
He did. That's funny.
Yeah. He said, look at my dimple. There you go.
All right, I think I know why. I opened up the YouTube stream, and I think I'm probably streaming too many things onto my desktop at the moment. Anyway, yeah, it is something that you have to look at as one. It is a donation, but it's also it's good press. It's like the article that came out yesterday. I didn't expect that. I don't think you expected that. Yeah. It was just all of a sudden, here is this thing outlining what we do and highlighting some of the companies that aren't Konami or Capcom that were involved in it. So, but it is good in the fact that you can, especially in the U.S., you can write that off to taxes, because that absolutely doesn't hurt either. So aside from the tax write-off and the feel-good aspect of it, how does going in and supporting these nonprofits, like OSD or any of the other ones out there, what are some of the other tangible benefits, to these studios to get?
I mean, I think a lot of it really comes back to, and I mean, it's not a trend anymore, it's the norm, but it comes back to that social responsibility or understanding how philanthropy fits into your marketing plan. I'm extremely pragmatic about this stuff. Like at the end of the day, like my presumption is, yes, you support the mission, our mission, your members you're supporting, like that's the given. So if that's the case, how do we understand goals associated working together? And mind you, as a nonprofit, we do have some limitations, like, you can't have quid pro quo where, you donate something in exchange for us doing something, because then that's not a donation. We're an agency at that point, and we're doing, you're paying us to do that. And mind you, we've been asked to do that, and a lot of people don't realize they're asking it. But I'd say it's kind of two places. It's in the community at large, being able to understand and really provide, again, something that a particular community, in our case, veterans or service members, and then internally as well. There's, obviously there's more and more members of the military that are getting out, transitioning to jobs. There's, thousands of them in the gaming industry, and you see a lot of these companies, if I rewind, 5-6 years, they support, Make-A-Wish Foundation, and they support Habitat for Humanity, and they support all these, and none of them support any sort of veteran charity or veteran nonprofit. And a lot of these veterans are finally raising their hands saying, hey, like, what's going on? I'm not saying like you have to do this, but why? Why are you not doing this? Do you not understand that we're here as well, and like we should be able to have a voice? But I'd say it kind of comes back to that co-branding. I mean, we've actually, for a number of studios and even a lot of product partners in other industries, we're almost a broker to the military and veteran space. And I say broker or a filter because you'll have a lot of companies where military members that are big fans will reach out like, hey, just wanted to let you know, or the other side, can I get something for free? And that's something that most organizations, even large ones, don't have a process to deal with, especially at scale. And so it's almost a service that we're providing to keep that stuff at arm's length and in the right box, to where, if I look at wargaming with what we've done with World of Tanks and World of Warships, is, again, very military friendly. I mean, we've done a lot of volunteering with them, with the Fisher House and Wounded Warrior Canada and these different organizations. But when it comes to the game itself, unless they go and develop a relationship with an ID.me or a GovX or these verification services, and it's still going to be a pain in the butt, it's hard for them to manage, where they can just have the normal process be like, hey, cool, I appreciate you, veteran. Here's where we do this stuff. And so it's the same thing with, like, we brought on Ice Shaker, which is I would call it's kind of a combination between a Yeti bottle, fitness bottle. Founders Chris Gronkowski, one of the Gronk brothers, everybody knows New England Patriots tight end, Rob, and he's a Shark Tank company, real awesome dude, but he had a buy one give one program. Buy a bottle, give one to troops. And then suddenly there was 1,000 of those that they needed to get out. Well, we're the only company on the planet that can move that sort of stuff in the context that it needs to be moved. And as more press started coming out, naturally, people, vets and service members are reaching out saying, hey, how do I get one? And instead of it being one-off all the time, he can say, hey, most of them are accounted for. Please reach out to OSD, learn about their programs, and they can take care of it.
So how do you, you're talking about you all are able to facilitate logistics and shipping that companies that do logistics and shipping aren't able to do. How do you manage all of it? Because it's not like you've got 100 people working down there at that Texas warehouse. How do you do that?
It's working smart. I hate to put it away. That's really what we got some awesome people on the team. A lot of the vets and leadership too as well come from the operations side of things, and not just like the warehouse grunt. Like, we're talking like managing massive amounts of equipment for special operations that has to move around a lot and solving tricky problems quickly. And so, like, I'll say we have 2 major international coffee companies we work with. One of them Starbucks. And they're one as well. Like, a lot of our relationship with them is helping them get their coffee overseas to troops. They've been doing this for years, but their normal sources, like the USO, the USO they work with a lot, but the USO is not a logistics and operations. We're behind the scenes. Like, OSD's origins, it happens to be video games, but we're a supply chain and logistics company. Like, let's get real. Like, if we know what company we are, and Starbucks can, drop 30 pallets of coffee, and we can help get it to sandy places because they don't have relationships that we have with the different branches and with the DoD to be able to move this. And importantly, for us to be able to tell our story, we want to get feedback and we want to get pictures and we want to make sure it's being enjoyed in the right context. Again, whether it's somebody playing Xbox or playing a board game from Steve Jackson or drinking some coffee, like, it has to be a circular loop of feedback so that folks want to continue to support, and so we can find more veterans and more active service members to allow them to thrive with these different programs.
It's just it's one of those things, and I think there's this gray area in companies. And we see it on the industry side when, like, EA launches a MMO title or something like Destiny, and it's like it completely goes to shit in like 48 hours because they don't have the server structure. And as gamers, and especially as people in the industry, we're looking at this going, how the hell do you not know you have this many people that are going to log in at one time?
Yeah.
But I think there's this like valley where people lose knowledge. It's like, you know this stuff and you're able to deal with it when you're a small, agile company that has to think on your feet all the time. And then I think, like, as these companies grow, they're just like, oh, we don't know how to do that anymore. We don't, if it doesn't fit into slot A and we move it to slot B, then no, we're screwed. And so it's amazing to me. And we see, like I said, we see it all over the place, but you have companies and groups like you all who have to deal with this, and therefore you can ship, a C-130 full of Starbucks over to, wherever it's going, that week anyway, and other companies can't do it. So
no. Well, and I got to call out what you said there with the companies and getting bigger, and I mean, like, it's like incompetence slowly grows. I think it's a mass conspiracy towards mediocrity. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, and again, this as well. Like, look at some of these bigger companies and look at some of their, some of the community support. And again, I say this, I have lots of great friends and great partners that work in these positions, and they know they're good at what they do. Now, at the same time, they also have 6 other members of the team that are purposely slow and, again, conspire together. I don't know whether they do it knowingly or to be as slow as freaking possible, because if we all lower expectations, then we can all keep our job. And I had a buddy that worked, again, let's call it one of the big 5 developers, and he was working in their customer support team. He'd come in every morning and they'd give him his list of tickets. Let's say it was 100, right? He'd knock out his 100 tickets with like an A rating by, within an hour and a half or 2 hours. All the while, every other employee would be lucky if they got half of them done by the end of the day. But he ended up leaving because he essentially got ostracized by the rest of the team. Not because he was just walking around going, I'm better than you. He was just like trying to lay low. He get bored. Like, that was the thing. He was there to work. And I will say, he was a veteran. I think that was a lot of it, is he's like, hey, I love this company because I love the games they make, but I'm here to go play those games after I get my job done, and I don't really want to just screw off all day because it's not fun here. It's not like we're sitting around playing these video games. We're going and troubleshooting stupid bugs and interesting, messages from the community. I want to move quickly. I want more. And even his management at one point in time was like, he went to them. He's like, hey, give me more. I'm getting these done. And maybe you could improve the results on yours. And he comes over, he's like, no, look at the report. Like, it cannot be improved. And they're like, oh, well, I mean, what can we do? I mean, you can go home if you want, but if you stay here, we'll still pay you. And after a bit, he's like, I can't do this. I want to accomplish things. Give me 500 tickets. Like, let's do this. I want to make this community awesome.
Well, and we see so much is run by analytics now that that's exactly it. Even if he's not sitting there, screwing around playing something on his phone because he has no tickets to do, he has completely fucked the curve for the analytics for everybody else that's on the team, because it's like all of a sudden everybody else looks bad, because they're getting shit done faster than anyone else.
Yeah.
So what are some of the hurdles that you see? So what are the blockages between what you all are doing and the developers or the publishers or the industry in general? And we'll talk about, like you said before we got started, there's the industry and then there's the community. We'll talk about the community in a minute, but on the industry side, what is it? Where can you use the most help? What are the things that consistently pop up that you need some support to get through or over?
Yeah, I mean, here's my non-genius answer. Games, it's product and money. I mean, that's really what it comes down to, and consistency in it. So a lot of it is the lack of understanding of our volume. I think everybody continues to be shocked. I mean, you even know what we do, and I think you're still shocked when we talk about the type of volume we put out, where we're supporting 500,000 troops overseas in a year, or we're signing a strategic partnership. Like I said, you're finalizing this with USO in an entire state, that what we do with games will serve 450,000 people a year. Like, that's insane. That's a huge amount of volume. And respectfully, like, I'll take the 5, 10, 20 games that a developer sends me, and I don't want anybody listening to think that that doesn't matter. It does matter. My hope is that there's 10 other developers who do the same thing, because I know a lot of times this product comes off of marketing budget, or it comes out of some really weird areas. But as a whole, we need more consistency from the industry. When it comes to games to grunts, because the games go so quickly, I want to be able to, work with, especially some of the developers that have games that are more noticeable. So obviously when a Tekken goes on there, we're like, oh, Tekken, that's great. And that's a $60 game, I believe. So the value and the brand is there, and they go away. Well, even if I don't put it up for another quarter, I'd love to know that I'm going to get another 2,000 keys next quarter, and then tell them, hey, guess what? It's literally 1,000 different people downloaded this, and that's good for your brand. And then the flip side of that, again, comes back to the monetary piece. So, what do you need to actually play Xbox and PlayStation games? You need an Xbox or PlayStation. What's expensive? Those. And I mean, I'll pick on them because I do it internally. I pick on Xbox all the time because it's getting better, but we've been around for almost 9 years. Total count, we had a number of 360s donated back in those era, but I believe the total count of Xbox Ones donated from Microsoft at this point is 16 total. And I'm well aware of them giving pallets of them to other organizations, one of which we actually fund. So they gave, literally there's another organization where we fund its existence, and they got a pallet of Xboxes that they didn't even know what to do with. And I'm sitting here going, if I want to keep up with the demand of what we provide, I need 500 a year. No joke. That's about how much it is. And I can't get it. And mind you, again, we know the economics behind it. Is essentially sold at a loss so that you can sell the video games and make the money. So even when I reach out to Best Buy or GameStop, and get these super magical nonprofit, business book pricing, you want to know what's funny? It's actually more expensive than retail, because any of the retail deals that happen every other week, where suddenly you can get 30% off of a piece of hardware, that doesn't apply to the business account. So we end up in this situation where, as odd as it might seem, there was a lot of timely things that were happening. I guess probably about, what was it, 2013, 2014, as we started to kind of evolve our programs as our community needed them to evolve into these other things like professional development and transition services, while continuing to still grow the video gaming and board gaming and coffee side of things. But a lot of it was because, I'm going to be bluntly honest, we needed to make sure we had a message that resonated with other types of companies that would be willing to write checks so we could actually buy Xboxes to be able to send alongside these games. So, but again, a lot of that comes down to when we're working with a certain partner, we want to understand ideally what are their business goals as it relates to this community, as it relates to philanthropy and social responsibility. And when that comes to be, we end up with great things like the commercial we did with Travis Pastrana and Nitro Circus last fall for the Give with Xbox campaign. So that was amazing. That was a really great way to bring the brands together, and that came down to us actually asking, what message are you trying to convey here? And I actually got to help write the storyboards and script for it and approve the final commercial. And we even rewrote some of the language in it on the spot where we were filming, because that's what we want to make sure we're able to help our partners with when the relationship makes sense.
If anybody needs to be doing something to, increase their bottom line or create write-offs right now, it should be GameStop. That's they're the ones that need all the help they can get right now. Which was funny because I said earlier this year, I said if GameStop makes it to Christmas, I'll be impressed. Sure as shit, they're closing 200 stores. Hopefully. It was Sony's announcement of the PS5, which ironically enough went out via Twitter yesterday. Mm-hmm. Will help that, but who knows? We will see.
Yeah.
All right, so let's switch over to the other side of the world, the community, the streamers, all of this. So obviously, if the developers and the publishers, if you want to get involved, you can reach out directly to OSD, to Glenn. If you know me, you can reach directly out to me. Glenn is now on our Discord, but I'm always on our Discord, obviously. So you can go to discord.gg/indiegamebusiness and poke me there and say, hey, look, what can we do? But let's talk about the streamers, because that's a huge aspect of the industry right now. What are some of the things, that they can do through 8-Bit Salute to help increase and do that message as well?
Absolutely. I mean, the big key, it comes down to, I think it's a great branded campaign to be able to do charity streaming under. So after listening to the community, we exclusively, maybe about a month ago, worked out a deal with Tiltify to switch back over to that platform. As a fantastic feature set, better integrations with overlays, because obviously they're owned by Amazon, being able to have the integration into, especially on the Twitch side, where you can have Amazon Pay, that's what's behind it at least, in the details of your stream, where somebody can donate without even leaving your streaming page, which is huge. When it comes to anything, whether it's e-commerce or nonprofits, the less clicks between interest in doing something and actually getting the money, the better. But being over there, it's a much better feature set. Now with ours, 8-Bit Salute's had a real history over the years that I think is worth sharing, because it's kind of behind the scenes, again, a business leader that you always have to consider, both as your own organization is growing, as well as while other organizations are moving and shaking out there. And while the nonprofit industry likes to pretend it's non-competitive, and I think it is to a degree, we still have to respect the fact that there's a limited amount of money. Essentially, donations as a percentage of GDP in the U.S. have been stagnant since the early 70s. Now, to me, I look at it and go, whoa, that just means there's actually a lot more money to go out and figure out how to earn so we can support our mission. But part of it is there's this kind of limited pool. And so it was back in, I think it was 2013, 2014, again, back in the same era. We previously had been doing 8-Bit Salute around Veterans Day. And so obviously, that's right there within the first, week and a half of November. And that posed some challenges. Number one, kind of from a OSD community standpoint, when it comes to Veterans Day, our predominant encouragement is we actually want people to get out in the community and do stuff, right? Not go down to Applebee's and get your free meal necessarily, but obviously go do that. or go to parade, but like get out and do something with other veterans of their community. Like, be an example, especially as a veteran in the community, so that others can see, what's possible and see this continued service. But the other piece of it was, Extra Life, which just continues to just be an absolutely amazing campaign. They always would have their big campaign right around there, because they have since they started. It was always like the beginning of November. And so we'd always dance on both sides of 8-Bit Salute, and we'd still have success. But it was just challenging because a lot of the community would like gravitate towards Extra Life. And mind you, on the scale of being risk averse or, completely politically agnostic, doing fundraising for sick kids versus troops and veterans seems a lot less risky. So, we'll call it what it is. I disagree most of the time with that being the case. Not so much, hey, go support whatever you want to support. You want to, save the whales, like go do that. Just be knowledgeable and show passionate. But what we did is we actually switched 8-Bit Salute to happen in May. So May is Military Appreciation Month. It has Armed Forces Day, Memorial Day, again, all these pieces. And the first year we switched over, we had to put a bunch of marketing behind it. Rooster Teeth got involved with, Rooster Teeth salutes. And we end up, again, I'll go to the end and work back. We ended up raising probably $300,000, some odd $1,000 in this pretty short period of time, which was a very significant leap for us at the time. But the platform I'm working on got DDoSed, because this is back when recreational DDoS was like a real big thing in the community. It got DDoSed in, I think, our entire server stack. Well, so not just OSD, like every other customer on the stack was off for 37 hours. And I talked to the platform and I'm like, hey guys, not acceptable. We estimate we lost something like $600,000 to $1.4 million because of that, because there was nowhere else on planet Earth to go take donations. The only way to make a donation was to buy a poster from Rooster Teeth. So again, thank goodness they were involved. I mean, I can give them credit. So anyways, what was funny though is we had that going. It was successful. And then St. Jude Play Live comes to the scene. And I got friends over there. One of my real good friends, vet, helped them get a job on their team. So again, love what they're doing. But they decide they're going to start doing their St. Jude's Play Live thing in May. Again, whatever, business decision. And I'm just like, oh my goodness gracious. Like, what do? You've got Extra Life, which is a juggernaut. That's in November. May is, 6 months either side. So it's out. And St. Jude comes in, they have the ability, if they want, to essentially make St. Jude Play Live a loss leader, because St. Jude is such a massive, multi-million dollar company. I mean, the amount of money they raise through St. Jude's Play Live is significant, but it's like it's statistically a rounding error inside of their annual fundraising. And so all that being said, really what we ended up doing is we made sure 8-Bit Salute became just kind of more integrated an entire year, and trying to be more flexible. So we don't have, a day necessarily that happens on. Portions of the community will lean towards Memorial Day, Veterans Day, 4th of July, Christmas, whatever they want. But you kind of got to roll with the ebbs and flows of all these other guys, and keep in mind that you've got companies like, American Heart Association that'll go draw, $5 million to work with a whole bunch of influencers to come in and raise $2.5 million. And that's not a dynamic we can really play with. So all that being said, I mean, really what we're looking for is, individuals that enjoy streaming, that, really want to support the troops, understand the programs, understand just kind of the breadth and responsibility of, yes, we send them video games and and whatnot where they're deployed, and as they transition through these different needs, it needs to be long term. But we just want to have fun. I mean, I think we're past the time of the 24-hour stream for a lot of people. That's a lot of time. It's a lot of effort. It has a lot of diminishing returns. And we really respect the time that somebody wants to give, especially if they're raising money for, a mission that we're responsible for executing on. And, we appreciate that sort of stuff. And it's super easy to get involved.
We're not past the 24 hours. That's what Indy knows. What's 12 times 24? Indy, how long do you do?
Yeah, but I'm not live the whole time, right? It's just a
Should be, though. I
marathon
think
with a
that's- I
bunch
think
of
that's what
streamers,
we
and we
should
had to do the same
to
thing.
next level.
We do. It's a 12 days of indie. This is going to be our 8th year, and it's a 12-day long marathon to raise money for Toys for Tots. We were like the first charity stream to raise money for Toys for Tots, and we did it from the 1st to the 12th of November. But then all of a sudden, so many other charity streams started happening, and so we moved it back into like the middle of November, which is after Extra Life. But it also, what would happen is the money that we would raise, by the time the 12 days was over, we could give the first week of the money to them, but then the next week would have to be for next year because all that money was whatever. So yeah, so we're in the middle of November.
Yeah, now you get it.
Yeah.
So I'm not that familiar with how Tiltify works because obviously we stream, but Indy does all the hard work. I just sit here and run my mouth and find people to talk to. How does Tiltify work? I mean, can you run as a streamer? Can you run an OSD charity stream at any point, or does it have to be like?
Okay. Yeah. Tiltify.
Any time. I mean, you could decide. I wouldn't advise it, but you could decide right now that you want to do a stream in an hour, and you could have it up. Because essentially, what Tiltify provides is the tool set in the portal. Because it's a payment processor. I mean, that's what it is behind the scenes. The payment processor, so that the donor, so the viewer of the stream, is able to make a donation directly to OSD, and OSD can give them a receipt, again, from a tax purposes standpoint. And then really where Tiltify set themselves apart is a lot of it's the overlays and integration. And that's what that's what a lot of streamers appreciate, is the ability to build in, different types of prizes or different types of milestones, and automatically, like if you could say like, hey, at $250 this happens, $500 this happens, like as you're moving your meter up, and it's not something you, the streamer, have to be as proactively paying attention to, because it just happens. Like you essentially preload a lot of that stuff into the system. So we were actually an early user of the platform, and because of a lot of the other sources of fundraising that we do, we for a time had to consolidate everything to our other platform. And I think the challenge was the other platforms don't integrate well with streaming. So Tiltify is like the only, I think there might be one other maybe, that allows the type of ping access to their server. Most of these other platforms, even, we've used Classy. I actually speak very highly of them. I like the company, I like their mentality, but you can't integrate with them the way you can with Tiltify. And so having things like notifications are always going to be delayed. And it's because Classy, from a tech and security and risk mitigation process, they're like, no, we're not going to let people ping our server 1,000 times a second. That's not going to happen. And Tiltify is like, hey, cool, we got it. We've got the market. Let's.
All right, so now I'm going to ask you some of these questions that are always brewing in the back of my head, but you and I don't talk as much as we probably should. And so, how are you going and promoting Tiltify and OSD and 8-Bit Salute to streamers? Have you reached out directly to them? Have you talked to some of the stream teams that are out there? Am I supposed to be doing that?
Yes. How many questions were there? Yeah. I mean, in a perfect world, we'd have a specific business development team that handles that. I mean, let's face it. That's essentially, what are we selling? We're selling a program service called OSD, and 8-Bit Salute is the brand, and the buyer is the streamer or the donor. Like that's really the model. The challenge is, how do you do that at scale with a lean team? That's just a normal, smaller business. Now with our challenge, it's, the 8-Bit Salute campaign's one of many types of sources. And, again, using all the business terms, the sales cycle on finding an individual streamer and the amount of time you might invest in that versus when it actually happens in the output is something that always has to be considered. So we have to do a lot of outreach. A lot of it's relationship based. I also am a bigger fan of reaching out again to larger groups, or even reaching out to developers and the hardware manufacturers, or the G Fuels, those types of organizations, streams, because then I can do co-branding stuff all day long. Like I know that game, understand that thing, and it's a lot easier for me to have a conversation with a Logitech or an Astro or G Fuel, and then say, hey, here's how OSD and you guys, in that brand work together underneath, the 8-bit salute as far as working your marketing plan. How can we utilize your resources, aka your stream team, your influence, to make that happen? And it's a lot easier because then they're able to leverage an additional relationship. Whereas in many cases, especially that top 5% of streamers, whether you're on Twitch or you're on Mix or wherever it is, you're getting paid to do this in a lot of cases. Let's be real. And it's the same thing as if you had an invited, a celebrity or an announcer to MC a gala, if we want to go old school profit route. It's the same thing. And so there's an expectation of that, but because we're we just don't do that. I mean, I don't know if I'll spend $1 million to make 5 million instantaneously. That's a all day long. I spend $1 million to make 2 million. But the dynamics behind it aren't as guaranteed when it comes to a lot of these charity streams. And so you have to kind of balance the level of effort, the type of message, the timing against some predictions on the output. But it really comes down to, does the streamer or the group even know what they're doing? And even some that are great streamers, great content producers, they're not great charity streamers, not just OSD, any organization, because they don't communicate with their audience in that way. But at the same time, you've got awesome parts like Chris Cole, where Travis Willingham is a good friend, a longtime supporter of OSD. His brother's a Marine, so there's that connection there. But they'll go and just issue a plea and call to action to their community via a video, and then lightly integrate it into a marketing plan over the course of 2 to 3 weeks. And they go raise $40,000. Whereas, so it's that's the hard part, where I'm extremely respectful of everybody's time. I mean, my favorite business strategy is lowest amount of effort, highest amount of payoff, and I want our partners to be able to see that as well, because oftentimes they're putting their neck out to put some time into something where, is it gonna generate 100,000, or is it gonna be a flop and everybody thinks they wasted their time? And I never want the latter to, because then we're not gonna do it again.
I don't know. When I did the 12 Days of Indie last year, on one hand, I was extremely thankful that I didn't have to shave my head. But
that's happening this year.
What I know.
You wear a hat. I can shave my head, and I do everyone.
Well, that's the other part of it. It's but nobody ever knows that I actually have hair, so that wouldn't be that big of a deal to work with. So, so just a streamer question: when you do things like the 12 Days of Indie, can you write that off as a donation? Your time?
I write off time as a donation. I mean, I don't know, but I mean, the donations, because we use Tiltify, it just goes directly to Toys for Tots.
Yeah, no, but you on your personal or business taxes or whatever it is, do you get to
write off the time?
Write off your personal time as part of that?
You can't. You can't do. But so here's an interesting one though. So a lot of corporations, Microsoft stores especially, have what do they call it? It's like matching donations. Like Microsoft, if you volunteer, they'll donate $25 to that. So imagine this, and you see a lot of, and we've done cases. You go to a Microsoft store. You convince 10 of their employees to do a charity stream for 10 hours. Suddenly you've got 100 hours of volunteer time times $25 an hour, and it's a direct check from Microsoft. So it doesn't even matter what they're doing or if they actually are successful with what you see. That oftentimes is still considered a volunteer time. Obviously they need to get it approved with their company, and depending upon where their company sits in the tech space, they have varying opinions on it. But your time itself, and it's the same thing. Like if you were like lawyers that do pro bono work, their company, so the law firm itself oftentimes can write off the value of specific tasks or activities, but the individual lawyer themselves, like their time, you can't, even if you were a $5 an hour lawyer, like you can't recognize that. You have to recognize the tangible part, not your time.
Got it.
Yeah.
See, look, now we get tax lessons on this show as well. So that's awesome.
That's all. That's good information, because I actually never even thought about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'm a compliance and risk nut, which is good for some people and bad for others. It makes it so there's certain things I'm way overly concerned about that most nonprofits, like, are ignorance is bliss. I mean, the majority of nonprofits that probably make under $250,000 a year probably don't have a board that's in compliance. I'd say statistically, and it's not that you really get in trouble. That's what's so silly is like, getting an IRS audit wouldn't slap you for the compliance stuff. Like you might have to pay some fines with certain with certain states depending upon their requirements, but a lot of it is like the state you start in. So like OSD is a Virginia corporation, but we're headquartered in Texas, and so we have to follow Virginia's law at the baseline, but we have to follow Texas's law because we're headquartered here, and then there's certain states we're registered in where you got to do other sorts. But being able to look and say, okay, like, what does this actually mean? What can you actually write off? And the other funny lesson I'll share, because I just find this to be bizarre, is so when you donate video games. So again, let's say you just donate. Let's keep it simple. You donate 10 new video games, and they're valued at $10 a piece retail. They're new. They're wrapped. Because it's in kind, when you give it to us, all we recognize is that you gave us 10 of that title. 10. Xbox game, whatever. We get to decide how much they're worth, and you get to decide how much they're worth. It doesn't necessarily actually reconcile. Now, again, that's where ethics come into it, but I've always thought that to be so freaking bizarre where like I can't recognize that. Now, mind you, it's because, with things like products, our compliance states, because we have to say like, well, how did we come up with the value? If I say the Tekken Steam key is worth $59.99. Well, it's because it's $59.99, and even if we got 1 million of them, if OSD wanted to acquire 1 million Tekken keys, it's going to cost us 1 million times $59.99. But that's where even with things like, used games, like what's that worth? Or used console, what's that worth? And we'll often use, going back to GameStop, we'll use them like the value guide, what it looks like. If GameStop's going to sell that used, what would that look like? Because we would acquire it.
$58.99.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, exactly. That's about right. And then we work with it, but it just creates. It's just these weird things you don't really think. It's also at that transition between console generations. Again, appreciated the thousands and thousands and thousands of in-kind donations, but it became a nightmare after Xbox One had come out for 2-3 years, because I'm not going to send Xbox 360 stuff overseas. It became less and less appreciated. But then I also have to figure out, like, at what point do we make a broad sweeping statement that says an Xbox 360 game, regardless of title, is worth $250, as opposed to inventorying every single random title that appears, which is what you have to do until you make the decision to just undervalue everything.
Well, I mean, that's why when you drop stuff off at Goodwill or whatever, they just give you a receipt that this is what you gave, and I'm like, yes, that end table was worth $4.6 million. There's Hey, just here's a tip for everybody with donations. For if you donate more than $499 in stuff, and how you would value it, even using like Deduct Pro or an H&R Block. Go back, even if it's like you drop off the value of $499 and then loop around a lot and come back, get a new receipt for every $499, because
you can basically put an unlimited amount of in-kind. This is personal or business, right? You can put an unlimited amount of sub $500 in-kind donations. If it goes over $500, there's an additional form you have to file. And it's not even that the information's not unreasonable, but it's unreasonable. If you get audited, you already have this information, but you don't want to give a single receipt with $2,500 because it like increases your red flag. But if you gave 5 of them at $499 and said we use fair market value and it's this, that, and the other thing, it doesn't raise any red flags.
Good tips. Good tips.
Yeah. You gotta love taxes.
Yeah.
Well, Glenn, I mean, we highly appreciate you coming on, and more so, we appreciate what you do. So if anyone's got any questions, so the website is weareosd.org, correct?
Correct.
Look at this. I remember stuff. You can always get a hold of them there. You can, like I said, they're on our Discord server. I'm on the board of advisors, so I absolutely know how to get a hold of Glenn at any hour of the day. Our Discord server is discord.gg/indiegamebusiness. So feel free to hop on there with about 500 other companies in the industry that bounce around our Discord server. We've got, so just like on the housekeeping side, 12 Days of Indies coming up in
November.
a few weeks.
Yeah.
Yep. And then our next online business networking event is November 7th and 8th. And so if you go to indiegame.business, all the news for the show, the podcast, the event, all of that is right there, ready to be consumed. And yeah, am I missing anything?
Oh, I think you're good.
No, we did it.
Yeah. So we got another show Friday?
Yes. And I just saw Lady Aviana in chat. She is actually our guest on Friday.
Nice. Yeah, she said hello an hour ago.
Yes, yeah, but I'm catching up.
Hi, lady.
On Friday, talking about women in media and streaming, and then I'm gone next week to GIC in Poland. So if you're going to be in Poland, or if you know of cool things for me to do while I'm in Poland, let me know.
Yeah, and then I'm on the ocean in the Bahamas the week after that. So if you know of anything cool to do on a Disney cruise.
don't get sick. Don't catch whatever.
What sucks is that like my flight leaves here, I don't know at what time, but then it's an overnight flight, and I'm just hoping that I can plug my CPAP into the outlet there. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to sleep correctly. That's going to suck. All
these airlines say they have plugs. I have yet to be on a damn airline.
I was on a plane that had one. I was on a plane that had one. It was an actual.
That's the one that I never get on.
The one freaking
so actually has it.
So that's gonna suck. I'm gonna get there at 6:45 in the morning. I'm gonna sit there with my big old CPAP on my lap, and they have battery powered ones, but I gotta figure out how to get me one.
Hey, go look up your flight on Seat. I think it's seatguru.com, and I'd say it's pretty accurate. I mean, obviously your flight can get changed at the last second, but
that's what happens.
Then at least you would know.
Either way,
you could have my flight to India next month, which is an 8-hour flight to London, a 7-hour layover in London, and then an 8-hour flight to India from there. And God knows what condition I'm going to be in when I get there. The other thing is the show actually does, have its own grown-up Twitter account now. So it's under business at Business Indie. Indie Game Business was one letter too long. So, all right. With that, we're going to call it a day. We'll be back on Friday.
Don't forget to listen to us on Anchor FM.
Yes.
The show will be up soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Awesome.
Bye.
Thanks, gentlemen. Bye.